all for being here. I'm really delighted to be here today. And I actually was thinking about it, and there's three reasons that I'm very happy to be here. The first is that I've been at Tufts for a really long time. And so I've had a chance to watch as Colin Oriens and Coco Gomez and the whole team has built the environmental studies program into the amazing powerhouse that it is today. Really, really impressive accomplishment. And so I'm very, very honored to be included in this lecture series. I'm also really grateful to Tufts University for giving me and dozens of Tufts students over the years the opportunity to delve deeply into the lives of what are definitely some of the most wondrous creatures on our planet. So fireflies, I think, are arguably our most charismatic mini fauna. And oh yeah, I'm also excited for this chance to share with you some of my own professional journey, a journey that's taken me from basically like traditional academic research, looking at questions, trying to get answers to questions, new discoveries about firefly behavior and ecology, the courtship behavior of fireflies, kind of laser focused in a way that academic science can be, to now I'm having a chance to really broaden out into putting some of that knowledge to good use by working on global firefly conservation. So I'll be taking you through some of that journey today. And I wanted to start by asking you, I'm curious to know, like, what do you want to know about fireflies? And so take a minute. White Kitty is curious about fireflies. And what are you curious to know about fireflies? Anybody? Just off the top of your head.
Why do they glow?
Why do they glow? Great question. Anybody, what else? Yeah. What's their life cycle? Awesome. Anybody else? Yeah.
Where in the world they
Where can they be found? Great. One more. Anybody? Do they get annoying? Oh, do they get annoyed when you trap them? These are great questions. I love it. I'm going to answer, I think, probably most of them. And if I don't, come back and ask me the question again at the end. So here's a roadmap of my talk. I'm going to start with a shout out to wonder. Because as Con has mentioned, wonder is, I think, one of the things that makes fireflies such a great gateway bug for getting people interested in science. And so I have been able to use wonder to do some work in science communication, and in particular, trying to get people who might not be interested in science, who might not believe in evolution, to appreciate some of the science behind the spectacle. So I'll talk a little bit about our work in science communication. And ooh, it's supposed to be springtime. I don't know, it feels a little bit like springtime. And who isn't interested in romance and sex in the spring? So I'll tell you a little bit about the work that my students and I have done looking into firefly courtship and sex lives, why they light up. And then I'll spend a bit of the talk talking about the work that we're doing now on global firefly conservation, trying to keep the magic alive. Okay, so, if you've ever seen fireflies or even heard about fireflies, you'll know that one of the things that's so cool about them is that the way they can transform an ordinary landscape, like your backyard or a neighborhood park or walking down the street, they transform landscapes into something that's ethereal and otherworldly. They take you to a different place. And this happens all over the world. This is a hillside in the Smoky Mountains that I saw being transformed into a living cascade of light by the ankle-high glows of these blue ghost fireflies. And in Japan, this is a roadside river that's giving birth to the slow floating flashes of these Genji fireflies. And in Malaysia, you can go and you can watch mangrove trees blossom nightly, not with flowers, but with the lights of 1,000 teep fireflies, all blinking together in stunning synchrony. So these luminous landscapes fill us with wonder. And at least for me, it's one of the things that keeps me connected to the magic of the natural world. And I still find it amazing that they're created by these tiny insects. And these insects have been celebrated for centuries, have been celebrated in poetry, in art, in movies, in stamps. And this is an insect. I know a lot of people don't like insects, but this is an insect with enormous cross-cultural appeal. Okay, not only are they beautiful, hey, but they're really useful too. And so fireflies have some practical applications I just wanted to tell you a little bit about. I'd like you to meet this guy. His name is William McElroy. In the middle of the 1900s, he was a professor and a biochemist at Johns Hopkins University, where he was a pioneer of bioluminescence research. McElroy was interested in how fireflies make their light, and so he paid neighborhood kids to go out into the parks in Baltimore and to collect fireflies, bring them to his lab the next morning, and he collected, well, the kids collected thousands and thousands and thousands of fireflies, which he then extracted, and they were Photinus pyralis fireflies, the most common firefly in the eastern US, including Baltimore. So what McElroy did is he extracted and identified the enzyme that makes light. It's called luciferase, and he figured out the dynamics of the light-producing reactions. So luciferase is the enzyme. It binds a substrate called luciferin in an active site that's shaped a little bit like a baseball glove. And in the presence of oxygen, like we breathe, and ATP, which you might remember is the universal energy carrier present in all living things, produces light. It's amazing. McElroy also discovered that in the absence of ATP, you could take firefly chemicals out, you could add ATP, it would produce light. In the absence of ATP, no light. No light, no ATP. If there's ATP, there's light. It's remarkably like a switch. So, very soon after this discovery, a small chemical company in St. Louis, Missouri, called the Sigma Chemical Company, started to pay collectors to go out and collect fireflies, which they then extracted these light-producing chemical from, and they capitalized on McElroy's discovery. These kits, they sold kits for detecting ATP, and these kits were rapidly adopted in science and industry for lots of different purposes, for testing, for food safety testing. So for testing to see whether there was tiny bits of bacterial contamination in soft drinks and like Coca-Cola and food, for very quickly quantifying the growth rates of bacteria. And even firefly chemicals were sent on the Viking missions to Mars to see if there was ATP containing life on other planets. Fortunately for the fireflies, and I think for us too, in 1985, the gene for firefly luciferase was cloned. And since then, it's been widely used as a reporter for gene expression in lots of different systems. So in agriculture, in biomedicine, in lots of different applications. So fireflies are beautiful, they're wondrous, and also useful. But in spite of this, some people actually, oh yeah, so a couple of years ago, I went onto Twitter in the interest of doing some science communication there. And I was surprised to see tweets like this. Are fireflies even real? I've never seen one, or even seen anyone see one. And I never recall seeing any in real life. And oh yeah, it boggles my mind that fireflies are even real. They look like little fairies, and I love it. Oh man, this was kind of disappointing to me because yeah, it's kind of, these are people and they don't think fireflies are real. So in the this sort of was one of the things that inspired my efforts at science communication. And as Colin mentioned, I got an amazing opportunity about 10 years ago. I got invited to give a TED talk about fireflies. And it was the scariest thing I have ever done. Really, yikes. I am a very shy person. And so it took me months and months and months of preparation to give it's a 14-minute talk. It was like, oh, this is crazy. Why am I spending so much time doing this? But you can watch it and judge for yourself. I also, during a sabbatical, I had an opportunity to write a popular science book about fireflies. It's called Silent Sparks. And in this book, I actually spark off of wonder and try to explain how fireflies have been shaped by the dual evolutionary processes of natural selection, the struggle for survival, and sexual selection, the struggle for reproductive opportunity. And this is true. If you love fireflies, I wrote this book for you. It's really, it's not a textbook. It's intended for anybody who likes fireflies. We continue to do a lot of science communication in my lab. My students and I have done lots of outreach. We write articles. This was in National Wildlife Magazine last year. We do podcasts. And last fall, in the New York Times science section, first page, featured a story about the work of Avalon Owens, who is pictured here. And Avalon has finished her PhD last March and worked on how light pollution impacts fireflies. You'll be hearing more about her work in just a minute, a little bit later in this talk. Okay, so in the course of talking to people about fireflies, I have discovered that there are some myths about fireflies that I encounter again and again and again. And this is one of them. A lot of people think that if you've seen one firefly, you've seen them all, right? And they don't realize that worldwide, there are more than 2,200 species, different species of firefly. They're all in the same family. They're all beetles in the family Lamparidae. But there's incredible diversity within this family. And so it's diversity in lifestyles, diversity in behavior, diversity in what they look like, diversity in the way they mate. And so there are some there's some fireflies where the adults don't use light at all. Instead, they use chemical signals to find their mates. There's some where the females, shown here and here and here, 3 females, are, they don't have any wings and they can't fly. They can only dream about flying. And so they are stuck on the ground and they glow for hours trying to attract males to mate with. So one of the things that ties all of these species together in this family is that they share a single common ancestor, and also that they all have bioluminescent babies. There's actually a book of poems called Bioluminescent Babies, and there's a firefly poem in it too. And they evolved around 130 million years ago. They've been around for a while, and recent phylogenetic evidence suggests that the ancestral firefly adults weren't bioluminescent. They did not light up. They used chemical signals to find their mates. Instead, light production, this light-producing talent, arose in the larval stage. What you're looking at here is a baby firefly, and this is a long exposure photograph of a baby firefly crawling down a twig and lighting up as it goes. And so we think that light production arose in the juvenile stage as a way of warning predators in dark environments that these fireflies are distasteful, even toxic to most predators. So originally evolved as a warning signal. Only later was it co-opted or accepted for an use as an adult courtship signal. Okay, the second myth that I encounter again and again and again is that everybody thinks fireflies mean summertime, and everybody wonders, where do fireflies go in the winter? And so I would like to tell you a little bit about the firefly life cycle. So like all beetles, fireflies go through complete metamorphosis. Complete metamorphosis. They completely change their bodies, their lifestyle, their, I don't know, like their goals, their intentions, everything changes as they go through these different life stages. And so the adults, after, which we're most familiar with, after the adults do their thing, mating here, the female crawls down to find a moist place like soil or moss to lay her eggs. And after a couple of weeks, these eggs hatch out into little tiny larvae, juveniles that crawl down underground and become voracious carnivores. Firefly larvae in North America, all firefly larvae live underground, and they spend a couple of, from anywhere from several months to a couple of years preying on earthworms, snails, slugs, anything that's soft-bodied enough that they could sink their jaws into. This particular group of fireflies specializes in eating earthworms, like these guys here. When they get big enough, they're just eating and growing and eating and growing. They get big enough, they undergo they pupate, again, in the soil or in rotting wood, and then finally transform into adults. Once they become adults, most fireflies don't eat anything at all. They're concentrated solely on procreation. That is to say, they do not sleep, they do not scroll, they don't do anything but look for mates. So the juveniles, all of these juvenile stages taken together in the temperate zone, juveniles live for about 2 years underground, and the adults only live for about 2 weeks. So it's pretty clear that if you wanted to protect fireflies, you need to know what their juvenile habitat is like and what their adult habitat is like, and protect both of those habitats. Okay, so we're turning to romance. You'll be glad to know. And one of the things that makes fireflies so attractive to scientists like myself, interested in studying courtship and mating and the evolutionary process of sexual selection, is that their courtship signals are easy to see, easy to quantify, easy to simulate. And so we've known for a while that in most fireflies, it's the males that are the primary signalers. That is, it's the males shown here that are flying around in their various habitats, giving off flash patterns that are characteristic of each species. And so one of the first things, and we've known this species-specific flash pattern stuff for about 50 years. One of the things that my students and I, so the males are flying around, they're giving these flash patterns. They are advertising their species identification and their maleness to females who are hanging out down below, resting on the ground or on a piece of grass, vegetation, and the females are looking up at the sky, and they're looking for these male signals. If they see a flash from a male that is particularly attractive, the females aim their lantern in his direction. Male's flying around up here. The female curls her abdomen like this, and she'll give a flash back. And they start up a dialogue, talking back and forth. It really is called a courtship flash dialogue. And it might look diagrammatically something like this. So here's a male of a species where signals of a male flash pattern is a pair of flashes that is repeated at intervals. And if the female is who's hanging out down below likes this male, she'll give a flash back. She doesn't always respond. And so one of the things that when we first started, my students, Chris Kratzley and Christian Damari, started looking more carefully at firefly courtships in the field and recording flash behavior. And what they discovered is that even within a species, there's a lot of variation in male flash timing. So males vary a lot in their flash timing. So in double flashing species, for example, Phytinus greenii, males might give a pair of flashes that are really close together or slightly longer interpulse interval or even longer. In single flashing species like Phytinus ignitus, males give pulses that are either longer in duration, medium in duration, or shorter in duration. These are pretty small differences. You might not detect these with your eye, but they're easy to detect. They're like tens of milliseconds, easy to detect with a computer. We also discovered that female flash response is key. If the female, hanging out down below, does not respond, the male will never find her. And females seem to be very, very picky. So we were interested in finding out what exactly are these females looking for. And so we went out into the field. Here's a former student, Taki Michailidis, in extreme anti-mosquito gear. If you think that working on fireflies is always fun, that's one of the problems. And Taki is actually running a photic playback experiment. He's playing different varying male flash signals and playing them back to, and then monitoring female response rates. And what we discovered is that in species where males gave pairs of flashes, what females liked best, they thought it was really hot if males gave flashes that were closer together. And in single flashing species, they responded preferentially to flashes that were slightly longer in duration. So why should they care? All the males look the same to me. But we spent a lot of time in the field, and we discovered that after the lights go out, that they end up mating, and they sometimes mate for long periods of time. And during this time, the male, shown on the bottom here, is busy transferring to the female. This is work done by former students, PhD students, Adam South, Jeff Rooney, and a former Tufts undergraduate, Jay van der Eyden. The males are busy transferring to the female, not just sperm, but also a nutrient-rich package called a nuptial gift. That's really the technical term for it. It's great. It's like no jargon here. Nuptial gift. And this is not to scale with these, but here's a male that accidentally dropped his nuptial gift. And you can see that relative to the size of the male, it's a pretty hefty investment. So, yeah, we call this firefly bling because it turns out that females that receive larger nuptial gifts can use these gifts to go on to lay more eggs. Okay, so I'm not going to bore you with all of the details, but what we think is going on is that females are trying to use male flash signals to try to predict which of these males have the biggest nuptial gift to offer, because that will allow them to produce more offspring. Okay, so we have learned so much about firefly behavior, firefly ecology, firefly evolution in just the past few decades. And that's very exciting. But while we're gathering all of this information, a lot of my colleagues around the world noticed that in many places, different populations of fireflies were actually fading out. And so it seemed like a good opportunity to put all of the knowledge that we had accumulated collectively to some good use. Because, yeah, it was reminding us about this ancient haiku, the firefly's light, how easily it goes on, how easily it goes out again. So in 2018, I had an opportunity to to start working with the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, otherwise known as the IUCN, as they were beginning to increase their efforts to conserve insect biodiversity. And so in 2018, we started the Firefly Specialist Group, which I now co-chair with Dr. Wondrous, who is at Monash University in Malaysia. And we started out with a number of goals. And the first one was to determine, hey, what are the key threats that face fireflies in different geographical regions? And so in 2020, we did a survey where we asked firefly experts in different parts of the world to rank different potential threats to fireflies in their region. And what we found was that there was surprisingly consistent ranking of threats across all the geographic regions where we had firefly experts. So let's take a look at the top three, which turn out to be pink and lime and green here. Everywhere, pretty much, the top threat to fireflies was considered to be habitat loss and degradation. Not surprising, since this is the major cause of biodiversity decline worldwide. And so I'm going to tell you just two examples. One is from Southeast Asia, where these Pteroptyx fireflies, actually the males gather in particular mangrove trees that are located in prominent places along mangrove rivers. And these riparian mangrove forests are now getting cut down and being replaced with oil palm plantations and shrimp aquaculture farms. And it's important to realize that this activity destroys not only the habitat that the adults use, the display trees that adults need to do their courtship communication, but also the habitat that firefly larvae, which live in the mangrove, in the mud along the mangrove rivers, and the firefly larvae and their prey need that habitat too. In the US, here's an example from Delaware coastal wetlands. There are wetlands that form in between sand dunes within spitting distance of the Atlantic Ocean. And these wetlands are home to the Bethany Beach firefly, where males fly around giving, hard to see here, but very bright green double flashes. And several decades ago, their habitat looked like this, Atlantic Ocean, their habitat. And now it looks like this. And so this kind of development and filling of wetlands has reduced the habitat area for the adults, for the larvae, for the whole life cycle of the Bethany Beach firefly, earning this firefly the sad distinction of being the most critically endangered firefly in the US right now. Okay, so the second biggest threat worldwide to fireflies is artificial light at night, otherwise known as light pollution. And this is a map of night sky brightness. And you can see that, and this is pretty recent, and you can see that in more than half of the United States, most people can't see the Milky Way at night, even if they go out on an extremely clear night in the middle of the winter and they look up at the stars and they can't see the Milky Way because of all the light pollution. And this has happened really quickly. Like, I was born in 1953, and this has kind of snuck up on us. So light pollution is unique because it's relatively easy to reverse. If we can learn to switch off, to dim, to shield our lights, we could avoid the situation that has been projected for 2025. So what does light pollution have to do with fireflies? And you might think on first principles, yeah, it could be a problem for creatures that are signaling with lights in order to find their mates to have a lot of background noise. Well, we have learned so much more about how light pollution impacts fireflies due to the work of Avalon Owens here at Tufts and some other people working on fireflies in other regions. But Avalon's work is really fabulous. I highly recommend that you invite her to give a talk. She has done we've learned so much about light pollution and insect declines from Avalon's work. I'm going to tell you about just one of her experiments, which is that she went out into the field and she collected males and females of a local firefly species from eastern Massachusetts. And she brought them into the lab and she exposed them to 5 different colors, 5 different types of LED lights. And they were both bright, and each color was bright and dim. And then she recorded their flash dialogue, males talking to females. And the title of her paper, which was published in 2021, kind of gives you the take-home message. But I thought, hey, you know, environmental studies, I'm going to show you some data. So we're looking at here, first at the male flash rate. And what Avalon found was that in complete darkness, these males gave about 10 flash patterns per minute. They're advertising. But in all colors of LED light, cool white, warm white, blue, amber, red, this male flash rate dropped to about 50% of what it had been in darkness. And this was true whether the lights were, in this case, bright or dim. Meanwhile, the females, female response rate, same colors, females in darkness replied to 100% nearly of all of the male flashes. They really liked these males. They were eager to respond to them and presumably to take it from there. But in the presence of any color of light, the female response rate dropped to basically 0. And it was a little bit, this for bright colors, this for a little bit better for dim light of all colors, but still substantially, significantly reduced over what the female response had been in darkness. So based on this work and other work that Avalon and others have done, we now know that light pollution disrupts firefly courtship by lowering male flash rates, by diminishing the female responsiveness, and therefore reducing their mating success. It breaks up the romance. Kind of sad. Okay, last threat I'm going to mention is the overuse of pesticide. This is kind of a no-brainer because these are, so this is actually a tweet by Elizabeth Colbert from a couple of days ago. She's commenting on an opinion piece in the New York Times by Margaret Renkl. Some of you might have seen it. A poison meant to kill invertebrates will kill every invertebrate in the yard. Yeah, this is kind of a no-brainer. This is a threat that's actually intended to kill insects, the overuse of neonicotinoids, widely marketed in the US and many other places for residential and agricultural use. We know that these compounds are highly persistent in the soil, which you'll remember is where fireflies hang out for a lot of their life cycle. And we know that they're toxic to a wide range of beneficial insects, including earthworms, the major prey of many firefly species. Okay, so I'm going to just tell you quickly about another kind of local threat, which many of our members of our IUCN Firefly Specialist Group are concerned because they are in countries where firefly tourism is a big deal. And so we wanted to take a look at it and try to come up with and then share guidelines for responsible firefly tourism. So in, I don't know, 2021, we did the first ever comprehensive review of firefly tourism, and we found out some really surprising things. We were super surprised to find out how popular it is. More than 1 million tourists travel specifically to places in more than 12 countries just to see fireflies. Very attractive eco-tourist destination. And we also describe in this paper some of the negative impacts on local firefly populations, which include the loss of adult habitat, and degradation and loss of larval habitat. Also trampling any of these terrestrial stages, the eggs, the larvae, lightless females, and of course, light pollution from tourist activities. And in this paper, we also suggest guidelines that could be used by site operators to mitigate these negative effects, and also to kind of come up with some guidelines that tourists might use in order to reduce their own impact when they go to watch fireflies. Okay, the last thing I'm going to talk about is we wanted to be able to identify which firefly species and habitats have the highest extinction risk in order to then be able to prioritize our conservation efforts. And so our dream is to complete the red list assessments for all firefly species. And as some of you might know, the IUCN red list is sort of the gold standard for ranking animal and plant species according to their risk of global extinction in the near future. And the categories range from they're doing fine, known as least concern, up through various levels of threatened with extinction, and to they're gone, they're extinct. And so this is a big dream. And we started with a baby step, which was in 2021, we started to assess about 140 firefly species present in the United States and Canada. And the people who did this are mostly Candace Fallon with the Xerces Society, and Anna Walker from the New Mexico Biopark Society, two of the North American NGOs that we have worked very, very closely with. And what we found, a summary, is that, hey, out of the 140 species, about a third of them are doing pretty well. They are least concern, and that includes Phytinus paralis that was collected in Baltimore so avidly by William McElroy. They're doing fine. And another firefly called Elychnia carusca. On the other hand, there are about a total of 18 species of firefly in the United States and Canada that are various levels of threatened, including, as we've already seen, one species that's critically endangered, Phyturus bethaniensis. Yeah, a lot of species, about half of them are called data deficient, which is to say, we know that they were described at some point in the past, and we think they probably exist somewhere, but no additional work has been done on them. So they could be very common in their one particular area, but nobody has looked for them there, or they could be critically endangered. And so they're called data deficient. We're looking at some of those species too. So this is a map of the distribution of the threatened fireflies in the US and Canada. And you can see they're mostly in three areas, in the southern and southwestern states, in the southeastern US, and also in the mid-Atlantic. And this information on the distribution, the threats, and conservation recommendations is summarized in a publication that the Xerces Society put out in 2022. Yeah, just about a year ago. And you can actually download this from the Xerces website, a free PDF. It has a lot of information, including species profiles for all of the threatened species. This is one of the threatened species, the Florida intertidal firefly, Micronaspis floridana. And this is a species profile from that State of the Firefly booklet. And it has really great information about the habitat, about the threats, about the activity period, when during the year they are seen, and what time of night, and their flash patterns. And so the Xerces Society has also just last month submitted petitions to the US Fish and Wildlife to have this species and 4 other threatened firefly species in the US petition to have them listed under the Endangered Species Act. We should hear back about that in some years. Okay, so the Xerces Society has also just last month launched a really, really great community science effort. It's called the Firefly Atlas. This is the address, and it's an online platform to engage people in all over the country, but especially in the areas where the threatened firefly species are found, and on 13 focal species, including, oh, it's really hard to read them, including one that Grace has been looking at, which is Wondrous World, which so going out and looking for these species that are either data deficient, we think they're there, but we're not really sure, or known to be threatened, to look for additional occurrences of these species. And at the same time, this global network of firefly experts is taking the work that we started in the US and Canada, doing red list assessments of fireflies. We have just submitted red list assessments for a bunch of species in Europe, Hong Kong, and Southeast Asia. Next, we are working on firefly species in Mexico, Brazil, Australia, and Israel. And we are just beginning to build capacity for firefly work in India and in the Philippines. We also are doing a lot of, in collaboration with Xerces and the New Mexico Biopark Society and Fireflies International, we're doing a lot of work on firefly education and advocacy. Again, on the Xerces website, there are booklets that you can download, Conserving the Jewels of the Night, brochures that you can download about firefly conservation, and these firefly-friendly lighting practices, fact sheets. More, lots of PDFs available at xerces.org. Okay, if you've seen the movie, you probably remember this line, right? So we've come a long way, and I hope to have convinced you today that fireflies are wondrous and diverse, that we should not take them for granted, and that we should be hopeful because we already know enough to start protecting these jewels of the night. Okay, I want to thank all of you for being here. I also want to give a special shout out to all of the students who have been on Tufts Team Firefly through the years, and also especially to the Tufts Biology Department, especially to Colin Oriens and Michael Reed and Andres Vega, Peter Frumhoff, not in Tufts Biology, but people who have really helped me move and learn about conservation, and I'm very grateful to them for that. I'm also very grateful to the leadership team, great group of people at Fireflies International, to our funders, and to these great photographers. We call them visual storytelling specialists. A lot of the really great photographs that you have seen in this presentation were by one of these people. So with that, I would be happy to hear your ideas, your questions, your reflections, and your inspirations. Thank you very much.
Thank you for such a beautiful presentation. I'm happy to pass the mic around for anybody who has a question.
And any questions that are on Zoom.
Thank you. Yes. So first of all, I wanted to start with an inspiration. I wanted to say thank you for being such a role model I remember being a young postdoc, starting fresh from grad school in the biology department. I always thought you were such a role model for what scientists should be when it comes to science communication, because there are so many great stories out there and they are just lost because people don't take the time to make them accessible to the public. Also, it was great to see in one talk all your work through your decades of work in the field and seeing all in one place. It was so cool. And finally, my question is along those lines. I've been so one of the specializations in the environmental studies major is environmental communication. So I recently have talked to quite a few students who are interested in the communication piece. So my question for you is, with so much experience in the field, what do you recommend to young students who want to share all these wonderful and wondrous stories with the broader community? Where should they start? Do you have any advice in terms not only skills, but maybe the type of internship or entry-level jobs that they should do to explore this field?
Yeah, great question. Thank you so much. And thank you for your very kind words too. Yeah, as I have described, I kind of, backed into science communication. So, but I agree, it's like vitally important. And I don't understand why there aren't more courses in science communication at the university level. I really think that there should be in every department, there should be like if somebody's getting a PhD or even an undergraduate degree in some specialized science field, they should actually have some tools at their disposal. They should be taught how to communicate. And it could be, anything. It could be giving talks, it could be going to events, it could be having plant sales, it could be writing children's books, whatever it is. I yesterday was talking to a freshman at Wesleyan who was actually in an environmental science class, freshman class, and she had to do a course on, she had to do a project on environmental communication. She was writing a children's book on fireflies. So yeah, there's so much more that we can do as institutions, and I think that there's a lot of government agencies, I think, that are, eager to have interns who are able to talk to people who are coming to state parks and national parks and to develop materials and just be out there, helping people understand what it is that they're looking at and why it is worth protecting. So yeah, I wish I had better answers, but yes, it's so important. So if any of you are interested in environmental communication, yes, it's environmental education. One other thing I would say is that I actually think that there could be, maybe there is already, and Colin, you would know, and Coco, whether there's better collaboration between the education department here at Tufts and the biology department in terms of environmental education. That seems like that's a place where we could really do some work.
That's a great suggestion. I have a question, but first I'll also just point out that in watching you do your environmental communication, it's been a journey in the process of fine-tuning and sort of thinking about how to communicate effectively. And so it's not something that you take a single course on and become sufficient. It's something that is this underlying passion that you have been willing to put in the time and the effort to just sort of get that message out. And it reminds me of how much we benefit from feedback and revision just in our own lives. Totally.
In fact, you probably remember when I first got invited to give the TED talk, I was like terrified. This is like the scariest thing I've ever done. And science communication does not come naturally to me at all. I really don't like talking to people. Like one-on-one is fine, but talking before big audiences, that's scary for me. But yes, I practiced that talk probably a million times in front of all different audiences. And you guys were great. Like, you kept coming to the talks and giving me feedback. This is really not clear. Could you make that a little bit clearer? It was really, really helpful. So yeah, having a sounding board and a group of people who just people, because that's who you're trying to talk to.
So my question was really around citizen science. Do we have an adopt? Grace is involved in a species. Can Grace adopt that species and become a lifelong sort of person who says, I'm going to sort of keep an eye on everything we know and learn about that? Is there an adopt a firefly program that's part of a citizen science?
Yeah, that's a really great suggestion. And I would say that Grace, I don't know if you started out intending to become like the person, the tourist Waldachia person, but you are. She has adopted this this firefly, and she knows a lot about it, and more than most people, like everybody but maybe Richard and at Xerces Society. So yeah, it's really, really it's very impressive. And yeah, there's enough species to go around. I think one of the things that the Xerces Society is trying to do in this Firefly Atlas community science project is exactly that, to get people in Delaware, to get people in Texas, to get people in Florida, to, you know, they're right there. It's more eyes on the ground. If they care, they could go out, you know, just, you know, probably, you know, a few dozen nights a year and look for fireflies in these locations. And so actually next, what is it, April? Actually, in the beginning of May, Xerces is running a firefly identification course online. You can find out about it on the Firefly Atlas website. It's going to be like a webinar thing that will teach people how to identify different species of fireflies with a focus on identifying the threatened fireflies in the US and Canada. So yeah, yes.
So we do have a few questions on Zoom. I did want to say along the lines of science communication really quick, another amazing science communicator is Neil deGrasse Tyson, and he has some amazing, if you like dig on Google, some interesting like interviews about kind of his process for when he starts bouncing ideas off of people and why he became so interested in science communication and being kind of an advocate for everything he does. So the two questions on Zoom are, one is kind of about like species and how fireflies fit into beetles. So what percentage of beetles are fireflies, if you know that? And I know there's like a ton of beetles in the world. And then I think a subset of that is like, are fireflies more species rich than other beetle groups? And if so, why? And like maybe evolutionarily, what's behind that?
Yep.
And the second question, which I'm happy. Yeah,
Maybe
go ahead.
That one,
Sure.
because you give me too many, I'm going to forget them all. So yeah, beetles are actually like, what is it? A quarter of all species, animal species on Earth are beetles, something ridiculously high. So beetles are incredibly diverse, and fireflies are not diverse. It's not like even close to the most diverse family of beetles. 2,200 species is nothing, like tiny, and that is both attractive. Yeah, that's attractive actually, because like we can actually wrap our minds around them. We think that we can actually do red list assessments for a lot of the firefly species. Whereas if we were working on, I don't know, you know, leaf beetles or something else like that, we would have to have like several lifetimes. So yeah, no, fireflies are not really that diverse. And part of that is that they haven't co-evolved with plants. That's kind of an answer to the question. I also want, what was the question about, you had a question about capturing them. Do they get annoyed? Yeah, so I wanted to come back to that question, which is, do fireflies get annoyed when you capture them? And the answer is yes, they do. And if you've ever like captured a firefly and held it in your hand, you might actually have a particular smell that they give off. So they have a way of protecting themselves, not just the light, but also they give off they contain a chemical that's very, very distasteful that actually is toxic to mammals. And they advertise that aromatically by giving off a scent when you capture them. And so if you ever capture a firefly, hold it gently in your hand and then just sniff your fist. And don't lick it, don't lick your fist. But yeah, they do get annoyed and they smell it out. Yeah, thank you for that question. Yes, Zoom.
The last question on Zoom is, what role do federal regulators have in conserving fireflies, and particularly in curbing light pollution?
Wait, say that, sorry, I missed.
No, it's okay. Do federal regulators have a role in conserving fireflies or curbing light pollution?
Yeah. Yes, a great question. Not yet. One of the things that we are working on with the IUCN at a global level is, actually Avalon has been working on this, is putting together a IUCN briefing sheet about light pollution and biodiversity. in advance of the red list assessments coming out for the European fireflies. So in Europe, which is actually way more light polluted than most of the United States, all of the firefly species that we recently completed red list assessments in Europe are highly threatened by light pollution. There's a number of glowworm species where the females are flightless, they can't disperse if there's lights, and we know a lot about how light pollution affects glowworm species. So yes, so we are hoping to be able to roll out a whole platform. We're working with Bug Life UK to and I know that they're talking to a lot of local and UK national policymakers about reducing light pollution as a way of protecting insect biodiversity and wildlife in general. Great question. Thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.